Welcome everybody back to the Inside Our Galaxy podcast. I'm your host, Eric Hernandez. As always, we got to talk about our Western Conference Final, our win in the Western Conference Final, which will ultimately lead us to the MLS Cup Final. We get a 1-0 win against the Seattle Sounders, moving us on into the big game against the New York Red Bulls, which we will also preview. Yeah, so obviously an exciting week that had just happened and also an exciting week going into this one. But unfortunately, there is a little bit of bad news in there, which of course is the big news, which is that Riqui Puig will not be available for the MLS Cup Final. He was injured during the Western Conference Final and, managed to also give us the winning assist on a torn ACL. So obviously that is also a topic of discussion we are going to talk about, which will also just mean a lot of implications going into this game. But of course, with a lot of good, there had to be some sort of bad going into there, which is unfortunate. But yeah, a lot of things to talk about. A big week this week. Yeah, I mean, obviously the MLS Cup, first times in 10 years. It's crazy to think about. But of course, this should be a good one to talk about. And of course, with me as always is my co-host, LA Galaxy Central. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. Obviously, very happy we won the West. We're going back to MLS Cup for the first time in 10 years with a chance to host it. Obviously, a massive deal. Very excited about that. Very nervous about that. Obviously, throughout the week, there's been a lot of ups and downs in terms of emotions, a lot of excitement, a lot of nervousness, like some joys of winning the West, some sad news about the Riqui Puig injury. So emotions are all over the place, honestly. It kind of feels like a roller coaster right now, but overall, I'm very happy to be in this position and ready to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we got to talk about the really good, right? It's like we're in the MLS Cup Final. Like, that's something that we've been wanting for so many years now. It's been 10 years. We're finally here. And like you said, the roller coaster of emotions is just everywhere for everybody. And it's crazy to think about that we're in this position. Like, like, honestly, even after the game, it was very hard to comprehend that, like, what had just happened. We're in the MLS Cup Final. And ultimately, just even after that, like, just big, hard-fought battle between the Seattle Sounders, it was crazy to just... It was crazy to witness, and it's crazy to think that we're in this position. And obviously, like you said, we're grateful that we're in this position and have an opportunity to go get our 6th trophy. So it is pretty crazy to think about. But obviously, before we can talk about the big game before the MLS Cup Final, we do have to talk about the Western Conference Final against the Seattle Sounders, which again, like I mentioned, was a battle. It was a battle. Very, very close game. It was the unstoppable force versus the immovable object for this matchup. It was going to be a very close matchup. I think everybody had expected that. And ultimately, it came down to the wire. It came down to the 85th minute with a Riqui Puig assist to Dejan Joveljic to get us the winning goal to move us forward into the MLS Cup Final. Yeah, and again, just like this week, last week was, a lot of emotion, a lot of nervousness going into that game. And now that it's over, it's just great to know that we're moving on and going into the big game. But of course, how'd you feel about that game, man? I know you were also in attendance. How'd you feel about that game? What were your thoughts about the whole situation? How'd you feel about it?
Yeah, like you said, it was definitely a battle. Seattle managed to keep it close, and we've seen that all playoffs, right? I mean, Seattle went to 2 penalty shootouts versus Houston. They took the game to extra time versus LAFC. This Seattle team, they know how to stay in the game. They're always going to keep it close, and that's exactly what they did. Having the best defense in the league, they definitely frustrated our offense a little bit. We saw that with only 1 goal. But also at the same time, I think the Galaxy also did a really good job defensively, holding them to a shutout. And that game was always going to come down to 1 or 2 moments and who can take those moments. And ultimately, as the Galaxy, taking that moment with Riqui Puig on a torn ACL, which, I mean, we'll talk about for sure. But getting a game-winning assist on an ACL, playing 30 minutes on it is that's pretty much unheard of. It's unbelievable that he did that. But we had our one moment. We took our one moment. It came down to one opportunity. And that one opportunity sent us at home to a cup final that we're going to be playing this Saturday. So, yeah, obviously, like you said, it was a battle, a very tough game. Seattle stayed in it, but we found the breakthrough, and that's all we need at the end of the day.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of these games, it has to be about moments. It has to be about your, just this game in general going into it. It just it had the feeling of like one moment could really mess up everything, right? And, and like you mentioned, like I think both teams played very well defensively. Offensively, we might have had like a slow night or maybe weren't there completely. And, and like you mentioned, like Seattle, like they were trying to play the long game. And they've done it very well successfully in these playoffs, going into extra time, going into penalties. And ultimately, that's kind of what I felt like at one point. It's like, okay, we're going to go into extra time. Like, that's going to be something the team hasn't done at all these playoffs. Like, well, how is that going to affect the team? And obviously Seattle had the advantage if we did go to extra time, right? But just in general, like this game going into it, it's like one mistake was going to ultimately, or like one moment was going to change everything. And for Seattle, it was Christian Roldan just having a bad pass and ultimately giving the ball away, and Riqui Puig setting up the assist. So at the end of the day, that helped us. But yeah, man, this was I almost want to say it was a nerve wracking type of game. Like going into this game was going into the week in general was very nervous for me. Like obviously we talked about it. It was like, oh, we're nervously excited about this game. Like we're excited, but we're nervous because it's the magnitude of the game. And then like the closer we got into the game, it was like, okay, I'm getting more nervous. Like literally once I went into got to the stadium, got to Dignity Health Sports Park, I'm like, okay, it's just pure nervousness for me. It's like, what the hell is going to happen in this game? But no, but I mean, I think it was kind of sort of what we were expecting. It was going to be a close game. The Seattle team wasn't going to. It wasn't going to be like we were going to score 5 goals on Seattle or anything like that. Like they were going to keep it close. So it was just a matter of like, how are we going to get those moments? How are we going to find our ways to win this game? And it took that one moment, really. It really did take that one moment. And it's just very, very, that one moment just leads us into the hosting the cup final, which is insane. I guess, like for that game, like, did you feel like at one point this game was going to go into extra time? And if you did, like, how, like, I guess confident or like your concerns were if we were to have gone into extra time for this game?
Yeah, honestly, I did think this game was going to go into extra time around like the 75th minute when the game kind of felt a little bit stale. Felt like there was a lot of tired legs out there. And yeah, going into extra time, I will say, like, I think the Galaxy had an advantage, like, in that point, not because of experience, but because we gave our offense 30 more minutes to score against tired legs. And I just felt like when push came to shove, like, we'd have more quality on the field than Seattle, so I thought we could have won in extra time. I will say, though, if we went to penalties, like, no, I don't think we would have won in penalties. Like, I would have been very worried about penalties, that idea. But, like, going into extra time, I thought, like, we could have something going. But for penalties, though, I think we would have definitely been at a major disadvantage if it went to that point. And I still think we are if that happens maybe the next game.
Yeah, I mean, definitely penalties. We have not been good in penalties at all. Just, I mean, individually we have it. I mean, we did win a shootout during Leagues Cup, but like, I mean, that doesn't, like this is different. It's like it's a very different scenario, and like I don't know if I would have been confident in penalty in either. But to be honest, I don't know if I would have felt super confident if we went to extra time. Like I get your point. Like yes, the quality is there, and maybe our quality would have eventually would have overcame those like tired legs that Seattle would have had. But like to be honest, it was just like, well, Seattle has already had so much success, playing that long game. It's like, and the Galaxy hadn't. Like they've gotten the job done in within those 90 minutes. So it's like, how would they react? Like I think that would have been my concern. If that was a possibility, it's like, how would they react? How would they play this? And I think just in general, the team was, getting ready for extra time. I mean, Greg Vanney had made subs like very late into the game. It was almost like in the 70th minute, like 80th minute, around those times where he was starting making subs. Well, other than the Mark Delgado one, which was, at halftime, but like for the other subs, like it was very late into the game where he was, putting those guys in. So it was kind of like, I think they were preparing for the extra time, but again, it was just like that goal that happened. It was just almost like out of nowhere, like to me. Like, and like I say this, like it was like after that game, I was like, what the hell just happened? Like, I like, it was very, very hard to comprehend what had happened within those last minutes of the game. And it, like, and so I think, for the team, they were kind of preparing themselves for extra time. But again, the goal just happened so fast that it was just like, oh, like, well, it's like, like, all right, we're in a good position. Now we just got to hold on. But yeah, like, I mean, in terms of extra time, it's like, I really don't know how we would have done. But, at the end of the day, at least we didn't go into extra time. We got the job done in 90 minutes. And I guess, at the end of the day, that's all that matters, right? We got the job done, and now we're going into the final.
Yeah, I mean, I will say for the goal we scored too, I mean, what a self-destruction by the Seattle Sounders defense that's been the best in the league all year. I mean, you have Alex Roldan chipping the ball right to our player over their midfielder's head, and then, like, we pass it, then Joveljic shoots it, and Stefan Fry has been, like, unbelievable in these playoffs, one of the best goalkeepers in MLS history, and in my opinion, on that shot, like, of a goalkeeper of his caliber, you'd probably expect him to save it, so it's like, the Seattle defense kind of just imploded at the worst time, and I think that benefited us a lot. I don't know if you
Yeah.
agree, but I kind of saw it that way.
No, yeah, definitely, for sure. It's like like I said, it's it leads to moments, and that one moment where Christian Roldan just
And Alex.
or Alex Roldan. Sorry, I thought it was Christian. Wrong Roldan, brother. But Alex Roldan, messes up. Messes up. It was just like that one moment ultimately helped us. Well, obviously the assist and the shot helped us win, but like for Seattle, it's like that one mess up cost them the a ticket to the final possibly. So it's just like that's what this game meant. It's just those small moments, but. Yeah, man. Like honestly, that goal and yeah, I thought Stephen Fry blocked it like for a second. Like I was in V block, like I couldn't really, see how well that shot was taken. But like I thought he had blocked it, and then for a split second, like everybody was kind of waiting, and then everybody jumped up, and I was just like, oh my god, like he scored, like what the hell just happened? It was just like so it was just so quick, like that when that goal happened, but yeah, man, it really does take like those moments like that. Those moments can really affect a game so much, especially with these caliber of a game. With how much is at stake. So it's like like those just small moments just really can affect the team so much, man.
You think that shot should have been saved?
I honestly thought it was going to be saved. Like you said, like Stephen Fry being the goalkeeper that he is, like that just almost seems like maybe a little bit of a routine save for him, and especially with how many saves that he's, the way he's been playing in these playoffs has been insane. So like you would think that he would have stopped that, but no, it just went past Joveljic, and it was crazy because I think I don't know where I listened to this, but it was just like Joveljic knew what side to shoot, to catch Stephen Fry. So like I guess he sort of knew like where to shoot it, which he did shoot to the left side. So it's like I guess that also helped a little bit, but at the same time it almost was a bit too close. Like I thought it was going to be blocked, but it didn't. It just went through, and again, like it was just so crazy because it just happened so quick.
I guess Stephen Fry is good everywhere but Dignity Health Sports Park, because remember, it's not his first mistake he's made this year either. Remember in March when the Peck shot went through? I guess he's just not good in our stadium.
Yeah, I guess not. I guess this is kind of like kind of like his maybe not curse, but just more like his just I don't know, but yeah, like I guess he's just not good here. It's just like and that always can happen to like a player. It's like there's some players that don't have good performances in certain places or certain teams, and maybe that was the one for Stephen Fry. But again, like I mean, like you mentioned, like Seattle played a very good game. Like they still played a really good game, and it was just that one moment that really just cost them. Like they still had it, like they were still a very good team and a very difficult opponent to face. So, but again, that one moment just really changed everything. Yeah. But yeah, man, I mean, obviously it was still pretty crazy though, that game, that magnitude. Like, I mean, I sort of talked about how nervous I was going into that game. Like, did you feel like nervousness at all? Like for me, like I said, like once I got to the stadium, like this whole like just nervousness feeling like came into me like out of nowhere. Like I don't know if you felt the same way or like what what were your, I guess, just the feeling going into the game, like going into the stadium, I guess.
Probably not as much as you based on what you're saying, but yeah, definitely still I felt like pretty nervous about it. I mean, it's a conference final in your own home. It's like how could you not really feel nervous about it and excited at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. It's just like I was excited, but then the nervousness just overcame me once the day actually happened. Like it was a weird feeling, but at the end of the day,
Gotta go in confident.
Yeah, gotta go in confident, gotta go in and show out. And honestly, I think that at one point, like the game, everybody felt nervous at one point. Like there was one moment where it was kind of like not necessarily quiet, but it was just sort of like everybody was kind of watching, like, hey, what's going to happen here? What's going to be the next move? And then again, the goal happens and everybody just erupts. But the atmosphere was still pretty great. Like the atmosphere was always going to be, intense for, I guess, Seattle in a sense, but also like energetic for us. Like it was going to be an energetic game, but at some point there was a bit of nervousness for everybody. But yeah, man, obviously crazy game. Do you have any other thoughts or anything that you kind of stood out to you in this game that kind of like that you thought about?
The Jovic goal was obviously super fun to celebrate. I mean, having that goal like right in front of me, I mean, it was just crazy to see, and it was just great to see. Honestly, it's like I think the people around me and myself haven't celebrated a goal that much in quite some time.
Dude, the amount, again, I was in V Block for this game. The amount of beer that went on me once that goal happened was insane. Like I literally smelled like a homeless person. Like it was bad. Like once that beer got on me, like I was just like, my God, this is like I'm happy, but it's also like kind of disgusting. Like what the fuck? Like there's so much. Like it was insane. But at the end of the day, those that was probably I guess the wettest of the beer showers that I've gotten in that section. Like it was pretty crazy, but like I mean I guess it was sort of worth it because of the goal. But like still though, like when that goal happened, It was crazy. It was insane. I'm pretty sure everybody had the same feeling. It was just like once it happened, it was just like everybody was going insane and shook and just everything, man. But yeah, man, dude, that goal is crazy, and it was obviously a crucial one to get us that win and ultimately get us into the final. I don't know if you want to talk about players or if you have any other final thoughts you want to say about the game.
We can move on if you want.
All right, let's talk about the players because obviously, the players had a lot of impact into this game. So let's talk about the defense. Of course, we got a shutout in this game, and we knew it was going to be a defensive game. And I even said, I don't know if I said on the podcast or if I texted you this, but I was like, the defense ultimately was going to be a big factor going into this game. And I think obviously they did show out with getting that shutout. But obviously, for I guess that defensive lineup, you had McCarthy in goal, you had Yamane, you had Yoshida, you had Garces, and you had John Nelson, the usual lineup that we've been, going for a while. But how'd you feel about the defense? What were your thoughts about them and their performance?
Yeah, obviously pretty good. Yet again, I think John McCarthy made some important stops. Obviously on Rusnak in the first few minutes of the game, that was important. Then the really big one, the Rusnak free kick that he pushed over the bar, that was a crucial stop for us. I think they did a good job organizing the backline on corner kicks, which is good. We learned from that after the Leagues Cup game where Seattle scored 2 set pieces on us. So the fact that we got 0 against us, definitely really good. And I just feel like everyone across the line played really good. I think John Nelson, again, stepped up. I think Yoshida was the leader back there. Garces has still been in form. And we know what we're getting from Yamane week in and week out. So it's like, when you see what we have at display right now, you're definitely very happy with it. Also, the Seattle offense, we kind of knew it was a bit weak. For me, the only way, I was worried about Seattle scoring was a set piece because I know they're so good on those and they have a ton of big bodies. And the fact that we did a good job on set pieces kind of made our defense, have a good night overall.
Yeah, definitely for sure. I think, you said that last week. It was set pieces were going to be a big thing. How are we going to defend those? And seemingly we did very good in those defensive set pieces. And just in general, the defense played very well. Defensively sound, as a unit was well, just in general. And as much as I could highlight the individual players, it's just for me as a unit, they played very well. Everybody had a moment, everybody had a contribution to the point where, it helped us not get scored on. And, yeah, just in general, the defense played very well. I think the one player I guess I was maybe most not impressed, but at least happy about was probably Mickey Yamane. I feel like he had a really good game and had some really crucial stops there. McCarthy, getting those saves and like you mentioned, the free kick, that was probably one of those big saves in that game. And in fact, I think that was the one the Galaxy really highlighted was that free kick save. So obviously he had a very good. He was making those saves and sort of what we've kind of expected from McCarthy. And yeah, obviously Garces is being that young player and still giving you those, him doing a lot of the dirty work paired next to Yoshida being the captain, the leader that he is. And yeah, obviously I think defensively as a unit, they played very well. John Nelson also played, of course, very well. So it's everybody had their contributions one way or the other, but I think as a unit, they were definitely, definitely good on the night. Yeah. But anything else you want to say about the defense or anything that kind of stood out to you from them?
Yeah, like I said before, the fact that we did a really good job on set pieces ultimately led to a really good night for us.
Yeah, definitely for sure. It was a good night for us. And again, I the defense in general has been playing very well these playoffs. Again, they've only allowed 3 goals these whole playoffs. And when you look at those 3 goals, you can even say it wasn't even entirely their fault. Defensively, we have been playing very well. As much as we like to talk about the offense this postseason, it was just for them, they've been having very good games this whole playoff. So yeah, definitely defensively we've been playing very well, and the defense is going to have to definitely step up and show out for the final, which we'll talk about later. But definitely they've been playing very well, especially in this game. Let's talk about the midfield. This one was going to be a little bit of a, we were kind of wondering who was going to start in the midfield. Was it going to be Marco Royce? Was it going to be Mark Delgado to start? Obviously, we did get Marco Royce to start. We had Cerrillo in there, and of course, we had Riqui Puig in there. So we started a little more offensively in the midfield. I will say, I didn't mind that we started offensively in the midfield, but clearly once the game happened and once the game progressed, it was clear that we needed to take out Marco Royce and put in Mark Delgado, which was a big factor once that happened, later on into the game. But still though, I think I didn't mind that was the starting midfield. But how'd you feel about it? What were your thoughts about the midfield, just in general or maybe just individual performances?
Yeah, overall, I'd say it's pretty good. I think Surreal did a really good job, helping our back line again and protecting them. I think that's his job, and he did a really good job at that. Marco Royce, I mean, I gotta be honest, like, I'm not too impressed. I mean, I'll say something for the Cup final. I think a lot of Galaxy fans would agree, but I just don't think he's fit right now either. And yeah, obviously he needed to come up at that point. He wasn't really helping us out too much, and he struggled a lot really to get anything going. Then yeah, Riqui Puig, I mean, another very impressive performance for sure, trying to get involved, trying to make things happen, wanting this game more than anybody else, and then, getting the game-winning assist on what was a torn ACL is like, and even playing through that in general just shows like how much he wanted, how much he wanted to get back to this point. And yeah, I mean, full respects to him for playing through that, for making that one moment for us, producing for us, and yeah, he played great on the night. Unfortunately, it's going to be his last game in some time, which is very sad to think about, not only for the final, but also coming up in the future too. But yeah, overall, I'd say the midfield is pretty good, but Marco Royce, I mean, definitely not a very good performance from him.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, in terms of Marco Royce, like he's been, like again, we talk about the little things, and because obviously he's like the career of Marco Royce, like he's a great player, he's a fantastic player, but at the same time, it's just like there's just these moments where you don't really like, and especially in this game, it's like you can tell this was in a game that he didn't. I mean, again, like starting, I didn't really mind, but it was also like it was clear, like after the like progressing into the game, it's like okay, we don't need Marco Royce, we clearly need Delgado. So like I think that was just more of like the Marco Royce thing. It wasn't necessarily him starting; it was just more like the realization progressing into the game that we didn't really need him. But even then, like he did not play, the best of, he didn't have the best of performance in that first half, and it was clear that we needed to take him out. Obviously, he did suffer a little bit of an injury, which we'll talk about later, I guess, too. But like, I guess he was feeling a little injured, but at the same time, it was like, yeah, we didn't need Marco Royce for that. Like for at that point, like it was clear that we needed Mark Delgado at the second half. But yeah, he was probably the guy who was like, yeah, like he didn't have the best performance, but other than that, obviously, like you mentioned, Cerrillo was still very well in this game. He still, helps us very well defensively, and in this game it showed as well. And then Riqui Puig, yeah, obviously the man of the topic of this week, obviously because of the fact of the assist to get us the goal, but also the injury, and it's just he gave it his art, he gave it his all clearly, especially in those last 30 minutes with that torn ACL, but he gave it his all. He got us the win, and yeah, like obviously we'll talk maybe about sort of the future of of him, but just in general in this game, he played very well. He gave it his all, and yeah, man, it's just really sad that he won't play the final. But man, he really gave it his all, and he played a very good game. And yeah, man, like it really does suck. But I think in terms of the midfield, yeah, I mean they played very very well, as well. Even though Marco Royce, I guess, didn't have a good half, but in general, I guess the midfield played well, and yeah, man, that Ricky news just still kind of breaks my heart a bit once and we'll talk about it in a bit, later. But yeah, it definitely hurts a little bit. But he still had a good night, just in general. But any other points you want to talk about the midfield, or move on into the offense now?
Yeah, it's kind of funny with Surreal. Like, he does so much for this team, but like a lot of people don't really highlight it that often, like we do with Riqui Puig, because obviously Riqui Puig offensively is doing so much. You could also say like defensively, like Surreal's kind of putting in those same principles that's really helping us out like that much more. You could say, like with how consistent he's been.
Yeah, yeah, definitely for sure. Like, and it's crazy because like we kind of talk about when we had those Brugman or Cerrillo conversations, it's like, well, okay, well, what do both really offer? It's like, yeah, it's like they're both defensive midfielders, but Brugman kind of gives you that offensive presence a little bit more with the line breaking. But obviously, I think having him being more of a defensive role and having him in there has definitely helped us a lot. And like you mentioned, it's not really highlighted because like obviously people like to look at stats, people like to look at goals and assists and things like that, but it's like it's more than just that. It's also just the quality of the field on the play, and Surreal really does defensively help us a lot. And that's sort of something that we've kind of struggled, I guess, like in past seasons, and I think he's brought a lot of that and has really helped us. Like and he's a young player. Like he's a young player with also a lot of experience in MLS as well. Before when he was with Dallas and things like that. But yeah, Surreal definitely has definitely deserves more flowers. Definitely deserves his flowers and definitely deserves a little bit more credit in terms of his performances. But yeah, definitely for sure he's the guy that you like to have on this team, and it's definitely been a good signing since we've gotten him. Yeah. But anyways, yeah. Let's move on into the offense. Unless you had anything else about the midfield. I don't know if you had anything else. No, okay. Let's move on to the offense. Of course, offense, you had Dejan Joveljic up top. You had Peck. You had Paint still. One goal on the night. We knew that this was going to be a struggling game for the or not for the defense, for the offense, considering what the Seattle Sounders defense. So obviously that was, maybe not the best of nights, but of course we knew that that was kind of going to be expected of this game. But how'd you feel about the offense, and what were your thoughts about their performances?
Obviously, a lot of credit to the Sounders defense, right? I mean, we said it before, it's the best in the league, and Painsaw and Peck just completely taking out the match, honestly. I think both their fullbacks did a really good job on them, and they were largely ineffective most of the night. And Jovic, too, throughout a lot of the match, like, he was trying to get involved, but I think their center backs were just on him. He wasn't getting the service. But like we talked about with this game, I mean, one opportunity, one moment, and that one opportunity fell to Jovic, and, like, we could say, like, the shot should have been saved. It was a good strike. I'm not going to say it was a bad strike. Like, it was a well-placed strike, but yeah, Jovic took that moment, and ultimately he's the hero of the Galaxy that sends them to MLS Cup. So, I mean, when you look at Jovic, it's like, yeah, the entire front three, like, they didn't really have it going all night, but when the one moment came push to shove, it's like we took it, and that sent us through, and that's what you're going to look at. And Jovic, obviously, 2 years ago, he said, like, oh, I'm the future of the LA Galaxy, like, I'm this big game player. Like, he was, like, talking a lot, and it's like, to see him back it up with that goal, I mean, it's just great to see, honestly.
Not only with the whole the I'm the future talks, but we talk about last season, man. Like we talk about last season, how like especially on the show, like we were talking about like is Dejan Joveljic the guy? Is he gonna really be the guy?
It was fair to have those conversations, too, I think.
Yeah, no, I mean definitely, it was very much fair to have those conversations, but it's just crazy, like to think that we had those conversations. We're saying, is he the guy? Or do we need to go get another striker, or do we need a second option behind him? And it's just like and the fact is like he, his whole season has been great for him, and such a resurgence for him, right? Like we were saying, like, is he capable of being a starter? And yeah, he's capable of being a starter, and obviously he's capable of giving you those moments, like those game time moments, those important moments, and this is another one that he has delivered. And yeah, like you said, like although we're kind of shook that like Stefan Fry didn't block it. Like he still had a good strike, and he still knew where to shoot. Like he even said, like, hey, I got to shoot on the left. That's kind of the one where maybe Stefan Fry won't block, and then he ends up scoring. So he knew what to do in that situation. But still though, yeah, Dejan Joveljic, like the conversations we were having, last season or even a couple years ago to what's transpired now is like what we've wanted to see from him, and it's crazy. And he's not a he's not a DP, and he's still putting up those really DP numbers and things like that. So it's like it's great to see him have those performances. So yeah, obviously he gives us the big moment. Paint still didn't really have the best of nights either, and like you mentioned, the fullbacks, the Seattle's fullbacks had a really good game, isolating those guys, really containing those guys. Payne still had a chance, to get the second goal to really seal the deal, but unfortunately that did not happen. I don't even think Peck really had that many great chances in this game from what I remembered, but even then, like you can tell he was a little, he was really trying to make that moment, but unfortunately he couldn't get it. But still though, like, those guys, they didn't really have the best of games, but again, like you mentioned, the moment, that's what matters. Dejan gives us that moment, gives us the win, and yeah, now we go into the next game for sure. But offensive, just in general, we knew that it was going to be a difficult night. It was going to take that one moment, so that was basically the gist of the night, regardless. But anything else you want to say about the offense or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, playoff Jovic is a real thing, right? 5 goals in 3 playoff games, and a lot of his goals were very important, like opening the score versus Colorado, giving us the lead back versus Minnesota, then scoring the game winner in the conference finals. Like, if we win, like, the MLS Cup final and Jovic has, like, a big part of that, if that's possible, it's like, Jovic is going to have, like, a legacy playoffs that we'll remember forever, honestly.
Definitely for sure, and and yeah, I mean, obviously, like he's been having a great playoffs, just in general in the playoffs. Even when we played in 2019, I think or not 22, he had a couple goals there as well. So it's like, or I think he only had one goal in there. But point is, like he's been having a great playoffs, and it's been a really good run. And like you mentioned, like obviously, if the possibility of taking it all the way, it's going to be one that's going to be remembered forever. But obviously, I think he knows that. I think he knows he's going to try to get that too. So he's going to be a big important part into the final, definitely for sure. But yeah, I mean, offensively, like he gave us that one moment, and honestly, just in general, I don't think anybody's ever really going to forget that moment. It's like because we haven't won a Western Conference final, or haven't, this is the one to get us to our first MLS Cup final in 10 years. So like I think it's a moment that I think everybody will remember for sure, regardless. But yeah, definitely give us that moment. But yeah, anything else you want to say about the offense? Before I move on.
Well, see, this is about like the game too. So obviously for the past 10 years, I mean, let's face it, Seattle has dominated the shit out of us. They beat us every single time. Before April of this year, we went 12 straight games winless versus the Sounders. Well, it's like, it kind of feels like this win is like, it feels a little bit extra nice after all those times you got dominated by the Sounders. And it's like, look, like the Sounders, they kicked their ass for the past 10 years. They dominated us in the regular season. But in the conference finals, the Galaxy have not one, not two, but three conference finals over them to zero. It's like, that's a really big bragging right for me.
Yeah, definitely for sure. Like that, and that's 3-0. Against them is pretty impressive, and yeah, it does feel sweet that with all the I guess you could say BS and all the stuff that we've had against the Seattle Sounders in the regular season. Like it does feel nice that we get this win. Like it really does. And again, like they're a good team though. Like they're a good team. They've rightfully have given us a lot of trouble, but to get that win against them definitely felt really good for sure, to get that. But yeah, I mean, just in general, it was pretty crazy. But yeah, I mean, Seattle though, 3-0 against in conference finals. That's pretty crazy, like to think about. But still. But yeah, though, any other thoughts you want to say about the game or anything like that, or anything before we say that? Anything you want to say about the management or the subs or anything like that? We haven't really talked about that.
Yeah, I'll say one more thing about the game too. Is Brian Schmetzer was 4-0 in the conference finals, and his first ever loss was to the Galaxy.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, that is a stat that we should know. And that's another thing too, going into this game that made me nervous, because it's like Brian Schmetzer has had Greg Vanney's number for quite some time, so, and like I even said it last week. I was like, the coaching matchup is going to be a factor too, and clearly Greg Vanney was able to get the right decisions and make the right adjustments in this game too. And again, I think he was preparing for extra time, but ultimately, like, we didn't have to. I think Greg Vanney was I think managing this game, he didn't do bad as well. And obviously he ends up getting a big win against a coaching rival, I guess you can say. I don't know if that's really a thing, but yeah, he did end up getting a win over his coaching rival, if you want to say that. But yeah, though. Anything else you want to say about the game before we move on into some Galaxy news and things like that?
No, obviously it was great to be at my first conference finals in 10 years. I absolutely love the Joveljic goal, celebrating that, the passion that was in the stadium. But we got our new biggest game in 10 years coming up, and I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we said that this Western Conference final was the biggest game in 10 years. Well, now this one is the biggest game in 10 years. So, yeah, obviously, yeah, I mean, just in general, the game atmosphere was insane. It was crazy. The moments were crazy, and yeah, like it was awesome being in there and seeing those guys. Like, it was cool seeing a trophy being lifted. Like, obviously this was like, surprising enough, this was my first Western Conference final, because obviously I was much younger when it happened. I was 14 the last time they won a title, or 14 or 15 last time they won a title. So it's like, at that time I wasn't like, I was a fan, but I necessarily didn't have the money, or like my family wasn't, didn't have the money to go to these type of games. But now that as an adult, I can experience these type of games, and it's pretty cool that I got to experience that. But now, going into the next game, it's going to even be like, even better. It's just like, it's an insane feeling to be in that stadium. Honestly, it was very emotional once the game was over. Like, for me, like, it was very, very emotional to see that we were going to our first MLS Cup in 10 years. So yeah, it was insane. But definitely, for sure, a lot of great moments, a lot of great memories. But we got to make some more memories coming this Saturday, and hopefully they're good ones. So yeah, definitely, for sure, there's still a lot more to be played. But yeah, Western Conference final, 1-0 win against the Seattle Sounders to push us into the final against the New York Red Bulls. Going to be a very, very big game going into this week. But yeah, though, that was the Western Conference final. Before we move on into the preview of the final, though, we got a little bit of Galaxy news. Obviously, we mentioned before, Riqui Puig, ACL in the Western Conference final, manages to play on it for 30 minutes. We saw initial reports on Sunday from, like, Spanish media outlets, from Spain, actually, some Spain media outlets, And we were all thinking like, are these true? Is it just BS? Is it just them trying to make a title, just get some articles, get some clicks on there? Like, we didn't know what was happening. Obviously, we knew Riqui Puig was had some discomfort after the game. We just didn't know if it was an ACL or not. Then lo and behold, Sunday afternoon at 4 p.m. to be exact, Galaxy announced that he did get that ACL and will undergo surgery. And will be out for quite some time. I believe a recovery usually takes around 7 to 9 months for an ACL, so it's a very, very long time till we see Riqui Puig back on the field. Obviously, we talked about the importance about him, in the Western Conference Final. Obviously, it's going to be very big going into this final, not having him. But now we also have to think about the future as well. As much as we don't want to, as much as we shouldn't really think about that right now, considering we have the final. But there's still conversations about the future, for Riqui Puig. But obviously when the news dropped, how'd you feel about it? What were your, I guess, thoughts about it? I know we were kind of, we texted each other once the news broke as well. But how'd you feel, I guess, once that news dropped and once it happened?
Devastated, man. Absolutely devastated. Kind of like you said, when we saw the initial outlets from Spain, I was like, I mean, how much do they really know? It's like if an MLS outlet hasn't reported yet, why would a Spanish outlet know? So I was just like, I was being hopeful, and then it's like, when the Galaxy posted, I was like, fuck, man. I mean, that just fucking sucked, honestly. It's like, out of all guys, too, like, look, I don't want anyone on our team to get injured, obviously. I don't want anyone on any team to get injured, if I'm being quite honest, but, like, for the one guy, like, I didn't want it to happen to, like, the one guy, like, out of everybody you didn't want to go down, that guy went down, and it just sucks because, like, I don't know, Riqui Puig was here, like, when we were shit. I mean, he stuck off last season when he had, like, just about every right to want to leave that situation. And to see we're back in the cup final, he said, like, this is what he came here to play for, and he can't play in it. I mean, it just sucks. Like, if you're a fan of any team, like, I don't even think it's a Galaxy thing. It's like, I'd feel bad if it happened to anybody, honestly. And it's like, it sucks. It sucks a lot. I can't worry too much about it because, like, look, we have a cup final in 3 days now. It's like, we can't really think about people that aren't going to be in the game. We can't really think about what this means for the future, even though obviously it means a lot. Like, I still think he'll be on the team. I think he can make a full recovery, but I mean, look, it's going to make our team worse. Let's be honest. But, the thing is for me is we're going to have to find solutions for it. We're not going to replace Riqui Puig, but we still have to put a team in place that's going to be competitive. That's, we're going to have an understanding out there. And yeah, I hope Riqui Puig makes a full recovery. Obviously, the players should be motivated to not only do it for the fans, for the club, but also for a fellow brother out there who played on a torn ACL and got you a win in extra time of a conference final or late in the game of a conference final. So, I mean, it sucks. It absolutely sucks. But injuries are just a part of the game. It sucks it had to happen to him. But the Galaxy, we got a big game coming up. We're going to have to figure it out, and we're going to have to figure it out quickly.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. Obviously, it's devastating. Yeah, like you mentioned, it's devastating. As in terms for this Saturday, obviously, yes, the team is going to have to stay focused as much as this is. It's painting. It's probably painful for them as well, knowing that one of their brothers isn't going to play, and the brother that really got you into this game isn't going to play the final. Like, it's devastating. They know that, but at the same time, they have to be focused 100% into the game. But in terms of Riqui, man, it's just like, it really does suck, man. It's like, and like you said, if there's one player you don't want to get injured, it was him. And this is a guy who's given his all for this team, whether we were good, whether we were down in the dumps. This man always showed up. He showed out. Never was a guy who complained. You never hear anything about like, oh, Riqui Puig is upset because we're not winning or anything like that. It's like, he came here to play games for the LA Galaxy. He came here to win games for the LA Galaxy and ultimately get us into this position. But it's just unfortunate that he's not going to play in that game. And honestly, it's just, yeah. And like you mentioned, it's like, you don't want to wish injury on anybody, on any player, because, that's ultimately, they're doing it for the love of their game. They're doing it for themselves. And also, even through a professional side and financial side, they're doing it to, for their families and for, to pay, it's their profession as well. So like for him to miss out now for a very long period of time is going to be sad. And, obviously we're going to have to think about those questions for the future, as much as we don't want to think about them now because we have a final. But still though, for Riqui, it's devastating, man. Like it really is. And I think this will motivate the team a lot more now. It really will bring them a lot closer, knowing that, hey, we got to do it for this guy because this guy ultimately got us to this position. So to me, it sucks. But at the same time, I just really hope it motivates the team going into this final. But yeah, man, for him, it's devastating. It really is. Honestly, it really changed the mood, on Sunday because everybody was happy about the game, everybody was happy about the win, and then all of that emotion shifted into, you know, sadness because of what happened to Ricky, and it's very unfortunate, man. Yeah, sorry, I caught you scratching your eye there, but still, though, yeah, very unfortunate for Ricky. But hey, man, like the show goes on, I guess. Like it goes on, and now the team and the players and the coaching staff are gonna have to find a way to win without Ricky. So that's gonna be that's what they're gonna have to focus on now. But yeah, no Riqui Puig torn ACL, big news going into this game and also into the future. Other news: Marco Reus, we also was part of the injury report, I guess you can say. He got taken out because of a groin injury. There was a report today saying he wasn't out on the field training, but then I also saw that I guess he was training inside, so he was doing something separate from the team. So I know you had sent me that, and we were saying like, oh well, he might. Who knows if he's going to play? But I guess he was just doing his own separate thing. So he was training, just not on the field. But yeah, Marco Reus obviously is going to be a big question. Is he going to be the guy to start? Is it going to be Fagundes who's starting? But yeah, like obviously, Marco Reus is, I guess, we got to keep an eye on what's going to be his status for Saturday going into this game for sure. But yeah, I think that's it for Galaxy News. Really nothing much, into the, I guess, injury reports or anything like that other than Ricky and Reus. I don't know if I'm missing anything, if you know.
I mean, the main news we need to worry about right now is we have a final to host on Saturday. That's the main news we should be worried about right now.
Well, definitely for sure. That is the big news. That is the big news. Like, hey, like we got an MLS Cup final. That's the news. Which I guess we can move into the preview, right? Like let's talk about that preview. Yeah, MLS Cup this Saturday at Dignity Health Sports Park at 1 p.m. against the New York Red Bulls. Again, any final is going to be, it's not going to be an easy one. The Red Bulls have definitely earned their way into this final with what they went through into the playoffs. They definitely earned their spot here. LA, New York, two big markets going head to head for the big game. Two original teams going head to head for the big game, for this Saturday. And yeah, man, obviously a lot of people are trying to buy their tickets, expensive tickets, by the way. But everybody's trying to get trying to get tickets for this game. Everybody wants to see this game, considering the fact of how long we've had to wait to get back into this game. But yeah, man, how do you feel about New York going into this matchup? What are your thoughts about it? And yeah, man, what do you think about it?
Obviously, it's a cup final, man. I mean, it's a cup final. What can we really say about it? Obviously, it's going to be a tough game. I mean, New York, they've earned their way to the final. New York, they're fine with being uncomfortable. I mean, look, this is a team that went into Columbus, a place where, by the way, they almost never lose. They beat Columbus. They beat them again. They swept Columbus, the defending champions. They played their rivals away, New York City FC, away from home and beat them. They went into Orlando, top 3 seed in the East, away again. They beat them. So, I mean, they're going away, Dignity Health Sports Park again. This team knows how to play away. They are very comfortable with playing away. They're used to playing in hard environments. They're used to kind of being not favorites in games they go in. They're fine with that. They're totally fine with that. They're not going into this game in an uncomfortable position. They'll be ready to go. I mean, they have a strong identity, the Red Bull brand, the high-pressing brand. Like, that's kind of who they are. They're a very good team that's very structurally organized. Obviously, they brought in Emil Forsberg, which is kind of the difference between this year's team and maybe previous year's teams that would lose early in the playoffs. It's like they have a star player now who is definitely a really good player we have to watch out for. And yeah, obviously, hosting this game for the Galaxy, just a massive, massive opportunity. I mean, I think every team in MLS would love to be in the position we are right now, hosting a cup final. And yeah, I mean, when you look at our players too, it's like we're going to have some big games. We'll talk a lot more about it too, about the players too. I'm sure this is not the only thing we'll say about it. But yeah, Red Bulls are a tough team. We got to come ready to play. I mean, I'll be there. I'm excited for it. I'm sure a lot of people will be there. It'll be sold out. And we got to be ready to go from the start.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. It's going to be a big, important game, and I will be there as well. I mean, did I pay maybe an arm and a leg for it? Sure, but at the same time, it was sort of worth it. But still, though, yeah, massive game going up against New York. And like you said, New York basically went through the gauntlet in terms of the playoffs, right? Like, they have had this underdog mentality going through the whole playoffs. And like you said, they've been playing away, and, they've had success, and they're in this spot for a reason. So I don't think that's really, like, it's not going to affect them at all. They're going to go into this game knowing that they have a chance, and rightfully so. Like, I mean, they've had a really good playoffs. They've had, good success, and just in general, like, I mean, this is a team that, I don't think really anybody really thought that they were going to make it this far. Like, even whether you look at it beginning of the season or going into the playoffs. In fact, I think going into the playoffs, they were like having a losing record, not like a losing record, but like they weren't going into good form. And then now they're getting into form in the right moment, right time, and they have this mentality that they think they have a chance, and again, rightfully so. So yeah, it's gonna be a very, very tough matchup. They got good players. Like you mentioned, they brought Forsberg in, who just loves ball. I mean, the guy abandoned his family to play for the New York Red Bulls, and so it's like the guy loves ball. Like, and once you see that guy on a team who is just gonna give it his all for the team, like, I mean, yeah, like I would be. That's a good player, I guess, to have. I mean, personally, I don't know, but still, though, it's like they still have really good players. They have a team that can go and compete, and and this is also a team that I think they have like the longest playoff streak in any like major league in like the U.S. I think it's like 15 or 16.
Yeah, 16, yeah.
16, right? Yeah. So it's like they've had the longest streak of going into the playoffs, and funny enough, like I always say, like, going into the playoffs, I always say like, oh, the Red Bulls, they might have a chance to go far. It never has, it hasn't happened, but until like this year, it's like it actually has. So it's like, oh shit, like, they actually did it. But still, though, it's a good team. It's gonna be a tough game, and seemingly they know how to play in uncomfortable situations. They're comfortable with the uncomfortable, I guess you could say. But still, though, they have the mentality of knowing they have a shot. So yeah, it's gonna be a tough game, and now it's just a matter of fact of what the Galaxy are going to have to do to combat this team. And I guess we can just sort of talk about that. Like, what do you think could be like a big factor on our side? Like, what do you think can make the difference of us, winning our sixth MLS Cup or not?
Honestly, for me, like, Fagundes absolutely has to start this game. For me, like, 100%, I'm completely on that side of the fence. Like, look, Fagundes, for me, what I like about him is he's been ready every single time we've called upon him. Beginning of the season, text with the Brazilian national team Olympic camp. Okay, Fagundes starts, we get results. Springtime, Pencil gets injured, we put in Fagundes, we continue to get results. Early June, and then the June month, like, Riqui Puig gets injured, we put in Fagundes, we get results. Sometimes our players get yellow card accumulations, like Puig or Pencil, we put in Fagundes, we get results. So, like, if I'm Greg Vanney, like, how could you look at this situation and say, like, well, like, I look at this, and this, where I trusted Fagundes, and every single time he's delivered, like, you got to look at it for the cup final too. It's like we got to play Fagundes because he's been reliable for us all year. Compared to Marco Reus, well, I'll admit Marco Reus is probably a better player than Diego Fagundes, but in my opinion, he's not fit right now. I mean, if you're not training with the team 3 days before a cup final, like, I'm not starting you. And when I see how he played versus Seattle, like, against this high-pressing, physical Red Bulls team, I don't think that's going to be good, honestly. I don't think they should start him. I think Fagundes is the right move. And then if we need a little boost to the offense and Royce is available, let's bring him on. But to start this game, like, Fagundes needs to be there from the start, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, definitely Fagundes is that guy who, we've had these discussions about Diego Fagundes. It's like Diego Fagundes is a very, very important piece. Now, obviously, has he played a lot of minutes, within the second half and stuff like that? No, he hasn't. But like you mentioned, it's like the moments where we called upon him, he has delivered. And ultimately, that's a guy you're going to need, especially with a guy like Riqui Puig down. Now, obviously, is Diego Fagundes Riqui Puig? No. Is he Marco Reus? No. Like, maybe like talent-wise or quality-wise, maybe it's not the same thing, but he still brings you, he offers you still a lot. And obviously him being an MLS guy, an MLS veteran, played in different teams, like I think I'd rather have him in this sort of situation. And like you mentioned, Marco Reus's fitness is a big deal as well, because it's like, if he's not really that fit, why would you start him? I could see the reasons why you would. Maybe it's because of the fact that, a big game like this, you may need somebody like a Marco Reus, like sort of like handling the game, not necessarily like what he's going to do on the field. But at the same time, it's like, I think Fagundes is the right choice to start off. And again, he's an important piece. And I think, again, I think he should start. And whether maybe and again, like, if we need a boost of offensive energy, do you have Marco Reus on the bench? I don't think, we have to force Marco Reus into this game, even if he's available. It's like, I don't think you got to force him in here, and you know that's what we brought him in here. Like we never said that he was going to be forced into these games or he was going to be the guy. So I think even if I don't even think Marco Royce would be, I don't think he'd be upset if that was the case either. So I think for me, I would agree that's a big factor, going into this game. Which I think again, Diego Fagundes for me probably would be the guy to start.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to your early point too. Like, yeah, obviously Diego Fagundes isn't Riqui Puig or isn't Marco Royce talent-wise or like the difference he can have on the game. But one thing I like about him is he's like just a good presence on the field. Like I think he makes everyone around him better. He's gonna make sure the ball goes into the right places. He's gonna be organized. He's gonna get players in the right spots. He's gonna make the right decisions. He's gonna take a step back, which I think is good. Something about Riqui Puig and Marco Royce is they're gonna want the ball. They're gonna want to make a difference. I think Fagundes, will let Peck and Paintsel and Joveljic all have big games, and he'll be okay taking that step back, which I think in this game is like, I mean, that's crucial for me. Peck needs to have an absolutely massive game. Paintsel and Joveljic obviously need to show up too. I think Peck maybe is a little more important than them right now, but yeah, obviously for the whole front three, they need to be massive, and I think having Fagundes there, is going to help him a lot. And you also combine the fact that, we haven't lost a game at Dignity Health Sports Park so far this year, and with Diego Fagundes, we hardly never lose with him in the starting lineup. You combine those two things together at our home with Diego Fagundes in the lineup, it's like, from a Galaxy perspective, you like those chances for us. You think you would give us, a really good odds to win, which is what we need in this Cup final, compared to Marco Royce, who doesn't have the same chemistry with these guys. So, I mean, I think Diego Fagundes starting is absolutely important. I think it does need to happen. Kind of reminds me of the Rose Bowl game a little bit. Like, do you go with Riqui? He's not great, not really, like, fully fit yet, and then we lose? Or do you start Fagundes, maybe more structurally organized? Like, I don't want that to repeat again. Like, I don't want to go with Marco Royce, but he's not fully fit, not maybe ready to go. Then the Red Bulls kind of exploit us, and then it's like we have to kind of scramble. Like, I'd rather go with Diego Fagundes, who I know is reliable, who I've seen more, who most importantly I know is fit. I mean, the fact that Marco Royce is not training with the team 72 hours before a final, I mean, you can't just brush that over. That's a big deal, like, if he's not training right now. So, yeah, I'd like to see Diego Fagundes, and I think that would give us the best chance to win ultimately.
Yeah, I think so too. Like I really think it's Diego Fagundes that needs to start. And again, I think the team knows what's going to be best for them. And again, I don't think this would be a team that would force Marco Royce to put him in this position. And again, I think it'd be like if they start him, I think it would be a pretty big risk. I would be kind of maybe not concerned, but I would be like, okay, like you really have faith in Marco Royce to really be the guy to start you and to really give you to be the guy to really take over Ricky's spot. And again, obviously, we're not asking these guys to do the same thing as Riqui either. Like, they got to play their own game the way they've always played it. But again, like, when you look at how both of these players operate, like, you would probably rather have Fagundes. And again, I think in shape and fitness level is going to be a big factor. And Diego Fagundes is 100% fit. And like you mentioned, reliable. And when we put him in these, situations, like, he has delivered. So I think that's going to be a crucial part of the game as well, I mean, I think you would have to start Diego Fagundes in this game.
It's kind of funny because, like, I was talking about, like, June Peck Ball, where, like, in June we won 4 straight games against Kansas City, New York City FC, RSL, then San Jose, where we obviously didn't have Riqui Puig starting in any of those games, and it's like, that's kind of what you're looking at for this game. It's like, what did we do well? How do we recreate that? And obviously, Diego Fagundes in the starting lineup is what it took, and obviously he was very helpful in that. Like, I think, too, Peck is going to have an absolutely massive game. Like, he can't play the way versus he did versus Seattle, or else, like, what we've been doing without Riqui that's been working for us automatically goes out the window. Another thing, too, that's worth noting is the combination plays Peck and Joveljic have had together, like, when Riqui has not played. They've been absolutely massive together. And that's a combination we're going to need to see come back to life for this game. And then Paintsel obviously is going to have to show up, too. We're going to need him more than anything. Any sort of offensive boost will definitely help us. So I think, like, yeah, Fagundes is obviously very important, but you're going to look at, Paintsel, who you paid $9 million for, Peck, who you paid around $10 million for. It's like, especially Peck, because of the form he's been in all season, that's came through to the playoffs, too. It's like, I mean, he's going to have just an absolutely massive game if the Galaxy want to win and be lifting their 6th trophy.
Definitely for sure, offensive. It's going to be a big deal. But again, like kind of how I mentioned, before. Like obviously we like to talk about the offense and how much they offer. But I look at this defense too, man. Like I really do look at this defense and say, like, hey, they've been playing very well in the playoffs, and they need to have this type of performance again. Like they need to have like what they performed in Seattle. Like they played very well defensively, and again they've been playing very well just in general in these playoffs. And I think I also look at that as a really big factor. It's like, how is this defense going to respond? Sure, I don't know how. Like obviously, yeah, with Riqui we have kind of turned over the ball a lot, but it's like when it comes to those transition plays and things like that, and how set the defense is, like they're gonna have to be on their toes too. And obviously, the saying is always, oh well, defense was championship. So it's like, the defense also has to have a big part in this game. And I kind of I have a big, like, I guess, outlook on them as well. Like, as much as we're talking about, like, hey, who's gonna be the guy, who's gonna put who we're gonna put in Ricky's spot and things like that, and who needs to step up in the offense, like the defense also has to have a massive game. Like, I really do think, like, they have to, keep playing the way they've been playing, and just in general, the chemistry between the defense has been phenomenal as well. So it's like they just have to be on their toes as well. So I really like to look a lot at the defense and see how they need to perform as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I agree with you with the defense. They have to have a great game too. But for the Galaxy side of things, when I look at if you were to say like who's the most important player on the field for this game, like I would have to say it's Gabriel Peck. And honestly, for me,
Yeah, I mean, Gabriel Peck is going to have to step it up. Honestly, I look at also Joseph Payne still now. Like, obviously, he's been having, a good playoffs. Like, he's scoring, he's contributing. We were saying, like, hey, when is he going to step up? And seemingly he has stepped up in, again, in moments in these playoffs. But now that's also another guy I look at and say, like, hey, we're going to need you here too as well. Like, there's no Ricky. Like, you're going to have to be a guy who's going to have to go in there, make those fast runs, and try to break, try to get behind that defensive line, and try to score. And again, he had a chance against Seattle. Unfortunately, it didn't go in, but like, you need those type of chances as well. Like, hey, we need you to be that type of guy. We need that, early pain still to really give us a good chance as well. But in terms of both wingers, yeah, definitely Gabriel Peck is the guy that you're going to have to look at to be the guy, because he seemingly has had, he's running wild. He's running wild. Since he's been in the league. So like, definitely for sure, he's the guy. I guess you're offensively you're gonna have to look at as well.
there's one thing you said that I would make a slight adjustment to, though. You said Paintsville needs to make runs in behind the defense. Well, with Ricky out, like I kind of disagree on that. For me, what changes a lot is I think the wingers have to like demand the ball and kind of check in for the ball. Like before with Riqui Puig, they can make runs in behind the back line because Riqui Puig had good enough vision and he was a good enough passer to, get those passes to those wingers. But like with Riqui Puig out, like I like Diego Fagundes a lot. I think he's a good player, but can he make those same passes? I mean, maybe. I hope he can, but I mean, I wouldn't bet on it right now, honestly. So for me, it's like, I think the wingers have to go one on one a lot more. Like, I think they're going to have to demand the ball. They're going to have to check in for the ball and kind of make their own plays happen, which I think they can. They have shown they can before. But I think their roles, like, they have to understand for us, like, their role without Riqui Puig definitely changes a lot.
Yeah, definitely for sure. The role, and that's something that Greg Vanny is going to have to figure out as well. It's like, how is this team going to play now without Ricky? Which seemingly they've done it before, like, and we've had success before. But now it's like, okay, now going up against this New York side, who we haven't played at all this season, obviously, because they're an Eastern Conference team, and just in general, I don't even know when's the last time we played the Red Bulls. I'm trying to even think.
2021 when Chicharito scored a hat trick.
See, that's a long ass time that we played the Red Bulls, and even then, like, that's a completely different team to what it is now. So it's like, it's like now it's going to be more of a difficult to, hey, like, how do we match up against this New York side, and now without Ricky, that's going to be a big deal. So like, Greg Vanny's going to have to find a way to get into that, but. And yeah, and I do agree with you saying the whole, like, hey, they got to check in with the ball, because you don't have Riqui Puig making those, long passes and the vision that he has, and hopefully Facundes can do something like that. But obviously, I guess we shouldn't really be betting on that either. Also, another thing I will say about the wingers is that what I have been seeing, and we've also have mentioned this before, it's like they do play a little bit defensively as well. Like, I've seen Payne still play a little bit more of the defensive ball too. So if they keep doing that as well, I think that's also a good thing for us, and possibly, to get us into those positions to go and score and things like that if they try to, create those turnovers. But yeah, man, like, obviously it's going to take everybody. Like, really, it really is going to take everybody. It's a cup final. Nobody's, if one guy is caught slacking, or in just in general, the moments, like we've been saying, if there's a moment where we're not ready, that can affect the game drastically. So we got to be ready for those moments as well. But yeah, man, like, obviously it's just a really, really, everybody's going to have to step up. But I guess, we're talking a lot about the Galaxy, but I mean, let's look at this New York side. What's something that I guess you can say, like, we should look out for against this New York team? Like what is something that can be sort of maybe cause a problem for us, or anything like that? Or maybe, like, I don't know. What do you see in this New York side that is going to be important also?
Very good defense, right? Only 2 goals against the entire playoffs. That's another very hard task without Riqui Puig. It's like they're probably not as good defensively as Seattle, but like still a really good defense. Carlos Cornell, their goalkeeper, has made some massive saves all playoffs. So again, it's like it's going to be hard to beat him. You're gonna have to be clinical. Then offensively, they have good players. They do have good players offensively. That kind of makes them a bit better than Seattle. Obviously, Emil Forsberg playing the Champions League many years for Red Bull over in Germany. Really good player. Lewis Morgan, really good player. Dante Van Zier, bit of a revelation in the playoffs. So they have a good front line. The defense is going to have to play well for us. We're going to have to watch out. Red Bulls also, I don't know if you know about Red Bull team identity. They like to press a lot. These playoffs, I've noticed they've kind of done it a little bit less. They've kind of sat in a little bit more, probably because they're on the road. But like you can still expect some press for sure, which is kind of worrying to me because like in the past, like think about St. Louis, they're also a team that presses a lot, and I feel like we kind of struggle versus that style of play. But I don't know how much they'll do it on the road in a cup final. Maybe they'll be okay with sitting back a little bit more. We'll have to wait and see when the game starts. But I mean, yeah, it's going to be tough. I mean, really good defense, quality offensive players. They're a hard-working team. That's kind of the Red Bull identity all across the world. Is they work hard. They're going to want it. They're going to want to win their first MLS Cup for sure, especially considering the rivals have one. They're going to want to even that up. We're going to want to win our sixth, first in 10 years. So it's going to be a battle. It's going to be a great game. I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, I mean, we have special players. We have good players, even without Puig, like Jovic, who's been great all playoffs. Painter, who's stepped up. Peck, who's been incredible all year. Fagundes, who's been reliable. We have the players too. So I believe we can do it in our own home with our fan base backing the team. And all I'll say about it is hopefully we can have players or a player step up in a special moment and be celebrating at the end of the day.
Like we always say on this show, we can only hope for the best, right?
Means more than anything right now.
And that means more than anything right now. But no, man, like honestly, this matchup, again, nervously excited for this game. Probably will be more nervous once the time comes, but still nervously excited for this game. And just in general, like, I mean, you got two original clubs going head to head in a final. Like, I think from a neutral and I guess fan of the league perspective, like that's a good thing to have, your original clubs be, playing for the big prize, especially in this era where we're seemingly have an expansion teams come in and out, or not in and out, but coming into the league more and more. So it's like to see those original teams play in this type of game. I think it's, it's special. I think it's good for the league, in my opinion, coming from a neutral perspective. But still, though, but for the Galaxy in this game, yeah, tough opponent, tough team. They got that underdog mentality, knowing that, and they're going to have the motivation thinking that they can go out and win this thing. And again, rightfully so, as I mentioned before, they rightfully have that, rightfully earned that mentality for sure. And now it's just a matter of how the Galaxy team is going to combat against this New York team, especially without Riqui Puig. And yeah, who's going to be the guy who steps up? Who's going to be the guy who steps up and ultimately, and hopefully helps us win that sixth title. So yeah, man, it's gonna be a good one. It's gonna be exciting. It's gonna be nerve-wracking. But at the end of the day, I think we're all sort of ready for this. Like, I mean, we've been waiting for this for 10 years. Like, everybody's been waiting for this, and I think everybody is sort of ready to see what happens next. Yeah, definitely. But anything else you want to say about this game? Anything you want to add on to before we go?
No, just let's be prepared and let's get after it. That's pretty much all I got. That's how I got to approach it.
Definitely, for sure. And not only just the team, but the fans, the home atmosphere. We've been a fortress this whole year. Now, obviously, it does suck knowing, and I know this is going to be a little off topic, it does suck knowing that maybe some of the most purist and hardcore fans might not be in the building, considering the ticket prices and stuff like that, which I know it's been a whole issue and everybody talking about that. But still, though, whoever's going to be in there and is going to rep the Galaxy, they got to give it their all, too. It's like, we got to make it a tough environment to play, even though, the Red Bulls have played away this whole time. It's like, we still got to make it a tough environment, and seemingly so, it has been a tough environment for those opposing teams. It has been a fortress, with the supporter groups and even, with everybody else outside of the supporter groups with, the whole rally towels and things like that. It's like, the atmosphere has been there. And for this final, we definitely need the home support has definitely got to be there more than ever. And so it's going to take all of us. It really is going to take all of us. Paint still even said it like a couple weeks ago. It's going to take everybody. So, again, we have an opportunity to do something we haven't done in a while. And, like you said, we got to go get it. We got to get after it, man. And again, it's going to be exciting, but also nervous. But yeah, man, I think that's going to be it for the episode. Can't thank you all enough for watching and listening. If you want to, follow us on social media. Follow me at Insider Galaxy on IG, on X. Go follow LA Galaxy Central on Instagram. And anything you want to say to the listeners and the followers before we go?
Let's come ready to go.
Definitely, for sure. Let's come ready to go for that game. Yeah, man, it's going to be a good one for sure. But yeah, can't thank you guys enough for watching and listening. Be a friend, tell a friend about the podcast, whenever you're listening to this podcast. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day, rest of your week. And yeah, like you mentioned, man, let's go get it. Whether you're at the stadium or you're at home or at a watch party, whatever the case may be, let's go get it, man. But yeah, thank you guys, and cheese up.
7 words.